There's no telling what Gurf Morlix has in store for us, so stay tuned.
That should work. Hi. So I was driving yesterday and Tom Petty came on the radio. It's like I realized how much I missed Tom Petty. And you know, it's like I didn't have all of his records. I bought some of his records, but some of them were classics, and he had an amazing catalog of songs that he wrote. And I saw him play a couple of times, and I met him once, but more importantly than that, I think he had the integrity that artists should aspire to, and so I found that pretty amazing. So he's really missed. He's been gone a little more than a year now. And I wanted to tell you about this thing that happened to me. I was on tour in Tampa, Florida, and I had a day off, and a friend who lives in Tampa, and I were going to go fishing in Tampa Bay, and so we hooked his boat trailer up to the back of his pickup, and we're heading for the boat ramp. And he stopped to buy some sandwiches on the way, and I waited in the truck while he went in. And while I was sitting in the truck, I had this uncomfortable feeling come over me, and it was kind of went from that shoulder to this shoulder, and it was kind of like I couldn't find a position that I felt comfortable. It was uncomfortable, but it only lasted like 30 seconds or so, and so it passed. And he got back in the truck. I didn't even tell him anything odd had happened, and so then the next morning I had to drive from Tampa to Orlando to play a show. It's about an hour and 20-minute drive, and I was getting ready to get in the shower, and I had my clothes off, I had the water set just right, I was about to step in, and all of a sudden I had that feeling again, same exact area, but this time it was painful. And I thought, oh man, something's definitely not right, this is weird. I decided this is not a good time to be naked and wet. So I turned the water off and I put my clothes back on, and I wasn't sure what to do, and then it passed, and it had only lasted like a minute or so, but I thought, now that could have been heart related. That was pretty weird, and that's twice in 2 days, and what am I going to do? I got this gig, it's an hour and 20-minute drive over there, and I've never canceled a gig in my life, so I decided I would drive to Orlando, and if nothing else happened, I would do the gig, I would drive back after the gig, and then the next morning I would go to a hospital and get checked out, and so that was my plan. And then I thought, well, you know, I've heard if it is a heart thing, I've heard aspirin is really good to have, to chew some aspirin, and so I decided I would stop and buy aspirin on the way. And I did. I got off of the interstate and I went and found a little convenience store, and they had every kind of pain reliever known to man except aspirin. They had Motrin, they had Tylenol, they had Aleve, but no Bayer aspirin. And so I got back on the freeway and I got off at another exit and went to another store, and it was the same story. And so I just kept driving, and all of a sudden I was approaching Orlando, and I found myself in this gigantic traffic jam on a late Sunday morning trying to get around Disney World. And I was dead stopped, so to speak, in the fast lane, and suddenly it happened again. And this time it was gigantic. It was the most pain I'd ever felt in my life, and straight from there to there. But I was like, oh man, I'm having a heart attack. This is awful, and I'm in a traffic jam. And I thought, well, I could pull into the median and call 911, but they'd have to have a helicopter to get to me, and I wasn't sure what to do. So I put my right turn signal on, and these cars slowly were inching up. It was moving a little. I managed to, after about 2 or 3 minutes, I got over into the center lane, and then I put my turn signal on again, and another minute or so, I finally made it over into the slow lane, and I went to the shoulder, and I raced up the shoulder as fast as I could, going 85 miles an hour, and I came to the first exit, and I got off. It's curving around, and I was just going to look for a hospital, and first thing I saw off to my right was a Florida tourist shop. There's nothing for me in a Florida tourist shop. They're just filled with crap, you know, and as far as I'm concerned. And I just looked at it, and as I'm driving around it, going around the curve really fast, I had this thought: tourists, they're hungover. They need aspirin. So I just pulled in there. I screeched in and went in there, and I swear it was lit with black lights. It was the oddest place I'd ever been in. I hope to go back someday and find out if it really was. But I found bare aspirin, and I just broke into the box and broke into the jar, started chewing them dry, and I went up to the counter to pay for them. And I think I maybe ate like 8 or 9 of them finally, and I paid for them, and there was this kind of big dumb kid at the counter who had no curiosity as to why I was chewing dry aspirins one after another, and I thought about telling him I was having a heart attack, and then I thought, no, I don't want to die in a Florida tourist shop. I really don't. I found myself thinking I'd rather die in my rent car. So I went out to my rent car to die, still chewing these aspirins, and I sat in the rent car for like 30 seconds or so, and it passed finally. And it had been like, I would say 5 or 6 minutes of the most intense pain that I had ever felt. And then I was trying to figure out, well, what do I do now? I got this gig, it's only 20 minutes away, I better not do that. So I punched in the hospital into my GPS, and it was, remember, it was 2.8 miles back down the freeway I had just come up. And so I drove back down there about 90 miles an hour, and I finally found this really shiny, nice new hospital in a little town south of Orlando called Celebration, Florida. And so I pulled up to the emergency room, and they had valet parking. And there were 2 cars stopped in front of me, so I parked behind the second car, and I waited for like 30 seconds or so, and I didn't see anybody, and I got out of my car, and I looked in that car, and there was no one in it, and I looked in the next car, there was no one. I looked inside the front door, I couldn't see anyone. So I went back and got in my car, and I drove around those cars, and I went and found the main parking lot, which is about 1/4 of a mile away, and I put my guitar in my trunk, and I gathered up everything I thought I might need if I was going to be there for a while, and I walked back to the emergency room and walked in and said, I think I just had a heart attack. And the person said, are you a doctor? I said, no, I'm not a doctor. They said, well, let us make the diagnosis. Right, and so they checked me out, and about a half an hour later, a guy came to me and said, hey, you had a heart attack. I said, thank you very much. So they did fix me up. They put a stent in and saved my life. I had 95% blockage in the lower left quadrant of my heart, and only in one area, apparently. And so they put this stent in, and the stent technology is really incredible. It's a little tube that sort of is spring-loaded, and it's like a wire mesh thing, and they put it in place, and then they let it go, and it expands, and it takes care of the blockage in your artery. And so the surgeon was a Fort Worth guy. He was great. I really liked him. I talked to him for about 20 minutes before the operation, and he explained to me how it was going to go. And he said, you're going to be conscious during this procedure, and what we're going to do is we're going to go in through your groin and open an artery and travel up the artery with this tube, with the stent, and with a camera. And so I was laying there on this table while he's telling me this, and there's a video monitor right to my left, and he said, you'll be able to watch the inside of your artery. And I said, well, that could be cool. And he said, we do these all day long, every day. This is what we do in this room. We do stents, and it's run-of-the-mill, but because we're opening an artery, there's a slight chance that you could die. So try not to thrash around, because you could bleed out in less than a minute and you'd be dead. And so I said, man, I will do my best. I'm on my best behavior here. And so then they started entering into my groin. I'd never been entered in my groin before. And I didn't feel anything, completely painless, but I realized as they're opening my artery that there was music on in the operating room, and I listened to it for a second, and it's like Desperado was playing. It's like, I'm not an Eagles fan by any stretch of the imagination. You guys might be, but I'm not. And I found myself thinking, now the doctor just told me there's a chance that I could die. What if I die and the last thing I hear before I die is Don Henley? I can't live with it. So I actually thought about asking him to change the music. And then I second guessed that. I thought, no, I want my surgeon comfortable. If he wants Barry Manilow on, he can have that, and I'll put up with it. And so I didn't ask him to do that. So I'm laying there on the table, and so they're coming up through, and I'm looking at the screen, and he comes down through the top of the left side of the heart, and he's getting ready to put it in place. He goes, I'm going to get this in place now, and I'm going to do it as fast as I can, but right before I get it in place, you're going to have the heart attack symptoms again. And so try not to thrash around because we have an artery open. And I said, well, once again, I promise. And then all of a sudden, I'm having the heart attack again. And it's the most pain I'd ever felt in my life. And I was really trying not to move, but it was really uncomfortable. This was the worst one. And then I realized somehow there was music playing in the operating room, and I listened to what song it was, and it was I Won't Back Down by Tom Petty. And I thought, now that's a song I could die to and live with. So I was really happy about it. And they saved my life, so. So I came back to Texas a few days later, and I wrote this song, and it's called My Heart Keeps Pounding. Crawling out of primordial ooze, learning how to sing the blues. From a turkey vulture, a great horned owl, I hear the wolves beginning to howl. Mama bear, she will growl. Blue panther on the prowl. Shaking, squeezing, stirring, beating, mixing, mashing. Life is fleeting. Who's out, who's in, choosing, cruising, bruising, contusion, total confusion, delay, decay, move on we must. Daylight to darkness, diamonds to dust. And my head is throbbing. My world keeps wobbling. All the alarms are sounding, but my heart keeps pounding. War, peace, rock and roll, these are forces beyond our control. Implosion, explosion, starting, stopping, open and close. I like to know the history, but I live for the mystery. And my head is throbbing, and my world is wobbling. All the alarms are sounding, but my heart keeps pounding. Lying, giving, dying, wishful free will, what's the use in trying? Peace, love, time, or the lack of it, pulse, heartbeat, getting in stand back and fuel, fire, smoke, higher, life, death, funeral pyre. And my head is throbbing, and my world is wobbling. All the alarms are sounding. Somehow my heart keeps pounding. Yeah, my heart keeps pounding. Ooh, ooh, ooh.
Yeah. We're out of time almost. Run, buy books, buy CDs from Gurf. If we get run out of here, they got to put up the chairs. They need to go home. We can stand on the sidewalk and talk.